Hi, I'm Kristin Davis, and I want to know, are you a Charlotte? Hello, everybody. Today we are going to rewatch episode 106. It's called Secret Sex. And I have the incredible Christine Taylor joining me. She's an actress, and you may know her as Marsha Brady in the Brady Bunch movies, or from her roles in The Craft or The Wedding Singer, Zoolander, Dodgeball, Arrested Development, and most recently the Apple TV series High Desert. She also had a memorable guest appearance on Curb Your Enthusiasm and Friends and Seinfeld, like myself. She and her husband Ben Stiller are the parents of two amazing young adults, Ella and Quinn, and she co-hosts with David Lasher her own podcast called Hey Dude, the 90s Called. Love her so much. Here's Christine. Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
So good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for doing this. Are you kidding? You're so perfect. I can't wait to hear your thoughts.
So excited.
Thank you. All right. Can I just start off? I love to ask people, like, when did you start watching the show? What were your memories of the beginning of the show? Obviously, we've both been around a long time. So
Yeah. And I was living in LA at the time, and it's funny because I started listening to the podcast. I picked a few episodes, which now I'm going to go back and listen all the way through because now I'm slightly obsessed, and restarted the show. But I, like everybody else, I did not audition for it. I was living in LA.
Oh.
I heard you tell the story of the part you played on Melrose Place, and I remember auditioning for that part.
No way! You auditioned for Brooke?
I'm pretty sure.
Gosh.
I mean, I know I sort of that's my claim to fame is that I feel like I auditioned for every Aaron Spelling show and never got cast.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was an experience. It worked out. It worked out fine.
But it was those were those coveted jobs. They were the 90s, and they were whatever. They were though. I just remember those casting calls. But Sex and the City, I never got an audition for, but watched it in real time when it came out, and just remember thinking never having lived in New York before either, thinking New York City seems so exciting, and it just seems so glamorous and spectacular, and it's so edgy, and but yet I always related to Charlotte. I mean, we'll get into whenever you want to get into.
Okay. I'll ask at the end, but I love that. Always love to hear that. Love to hear that.
I was just a fan. I just watched the show in real time, and had not gone back to watch it. I've not been caught up to, and just like that, I haven't watched both of the movies, but I watched the entire.
Well, you're gonna have to.
Oh, I sure am.
I don't even know if we should get into this now, but Christine's daughter, Ella, who's so incredible, just as a person, congratulations. You have raised an incredible human, but also so incredibly talented. She is going to be on And Just Like That with us.
Yes.
She was such a joy.
Dream. It was dream
it
job
was so
for
great.
Her. Just the greatest days working with you and Cynthia and everybody. She got a chance to work with everybody.
Oh, let me tell you, we're in a scene together where literally every person shows up, and Ella was just such a trooper. I'm not going to share any details. I don't want to give anything away, but we really had fun, and I mean, she's just so funny and interesting. Anyway, I'm off on Ella, but isn't it weird that you have a grown-up, you've raised a grown-up?
It's crazy. It's really crazy. And I also feel like sometimes she's more grown up, more mature, more self-assured and self-aware than I still am. You know what I mean?
I do.
She grew up in a time and in a world as a young woman who has just a different level of sort of knowing who she is and what she wants, and can articulate it and state it and be okay with that, whether it alienates people or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not who I ever was. That's not
me neither.
I strive to be that. I still
Sure. Yeah, but it's different times, right? I mean, that's what's also interesting about rewatching the show, because you were in the first season, which aired in 1998.
Yep.
I believe we filmed it and it aired in 1998, except for the pilot, which was 1997. And sometimes when I'm watching it, like for instance, this episode where she's going to go on her big date, which we'll get to in a second, and we all come over to like give her moral support, it's almost like we're in college. Like even though at the time, kind of part of what I remember being so excited about, other than the fact that we were actually filming in New York, which was a dream come true, and also that there were 4 women leads, which was also kind of like unheard of and shocking.
Oh my God.
I also was so excited that we were characters who were in our 30s, and it would mean that I could stop lying as an actress. Because remember when you would audition, you would just say whatever age the part was?
Yeah, and that was a time where they could actually ask you your age, which is a no-no
right, now. Which is like, crazy. That's so crazy. Wow. Right. Like IMDb would like just say your age. Like you had to say your age all the time. And you would just say like whatever age, or maybe 1 year older or younger.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for me, I was like, oh, thank God I don't have to lie about my age now. What a relief. Wow. But we were like, shockingly in our 30s. Oh my God. Having sex and relationships, like so shocking, right? Which is funny now to look at because there's such an innocence in a way. I mean, there's also like really kind of some kind of shocking things, but also just our emotional way that we are in the show. Yes. I think it's so sweet in some ways, in ways I don't remember.
Yes, there's like a simplicity to it because, and also I think because you four as a sort of like a group of like these doing it together, it was like we as an audience were being sort of let in on these secrets that as women, we knew we had all these conversations with our girlfriends. And it was now happening on television, which at the time was those kinds of things, going back to like Melrose Place or 902, it was in the more soapy version.
Right.
A lot of that stuff was happening, but it wasn't like the real version where we're talking about insecurities and, and like, oh, that's too much or that's not enough or here are the rules. Like you're like rules in this episode. Right.
Oh my gosh. The rules kill me. The rules are so funny. And I think it's so interesting. Like it would be really fun one day to have you and Ella on at the same time. I want to do like a multi-generational conversation because I am so curious how they feel now, whether these things are still true. Like for instance, what we're basically alluding to. So this is the episode where Carrie goes on her first official date with Big, which is really the centerpiece of the whole episode. She wears this incredible dress, which we'll get to in a minute. But we come over, Samantha, Miranda, and Samantha come over for emotional support before she goes, which is so kind of cute and adorable. And she's wearing this incredible dress, so we kind of like hype her up a bit. And then Charlotte's very concerned because the dress is like kind of a naked type dress.
Well, first of all, your reaction just when she walks in, and I watched the episode twice because I watched it the first. Ella, as soon as I told Ella I was doing this podcast, she was like, I have to watch the episode with you because I watched the series 3 years ago and I haven't rewatched it in 3 years. She was like, so I need to rewatch it again anyway. So you have to save that episode. So I watched it for you I started the show again. And then she and I last night got together, ordered some food and watched like 3 of them or something like that. And we started this episode so I wouldn't like get too ahead of things.
I understand. Yes.
But I was just taking it all in and then I rewatched it again this morning and your reaction, everyone else is like dying over how amazing she looks in the dress. And Charlotte's reaction is like,
I know.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
I know. The faces I make, oh my God, the faces.
Naming it the naked dress, which is...
I know it. And it kind of is. And then Miranda says, it's tits on toast, which is also kind of hysterical and pretty accurate. But then it's kind of adorable what everybody says and interesting and still kind of... I'm sure that this is different. But Charlotte says, this really cracks me up. Charlotte says... Because the number, she basically says, you can't have sex with them tonight. Do not have sex on the first date.
Because you want this to be taken seriously, right?
Right. I want it to work out. I'm in the big camp, right? From the get-go. Though, I mean, when I'm watching it back, I'm like, why? But whatever. That's a different conversation. So I say, because the number of dates that you wait to have sex with a man is directly proportional to your age. What? What am I talking about?
I was trying to figure out what that even means.
And also, like, does it get smaller as you get older? Or does it grow as you grow? I'm really confused.
I love that. No, and I love that they just let it go.
They're just like, whatever, girl, whatever, which is what they often do to me. But then even Miranda says, don't have sex on the first date. I believe she says, don't on the first date. Then Samantha says, and very, very smart, she says, you can still get dumped on your first date or your 10th date whenever you have sex. And this is a good point. Right. A good point, Samantha. So my curiosity in now that there's been dating apps and there's been the hookup culture and all this, like, what do the young people think? Did Ella give any insight?
It's so funny. I would love to, listen, I have a kid who tells me everything. So I really, even my son who's 19, he's still the kid who tells me things as a 19.
Love it.
He's a mom boy. So I love that I still get I also love that about this generation and being a parent of kids of this generation is sort of like, I guess our own flaw was like in the helicopter parenting of it all. And also through COVID, we all spend so much time together. So I had a friend once say to me, like, when your kids are younger and they're babbling about stuff that like is unimportant, just act so just really like pretend like the blowing the bubbles on the thing was the greatest thing. And you're going to because as the information gets more important as they get older, the trust is there and they know they've got you. And so I do. Yes. So I don't know. What I will say about Ella, she didn't really have insight. I just know she is not a Charlotte. She's like the last of the list. She is not a Charlotte as much. She told me, she's like, I don't think there's much Charlotte at all in her. She thinks there could be mixes of people. And she's like, there's no Charlotte in.
Okay.
Just it's so funny because she's my child. And I would say I'm
hysterical.
Mostly Charlotte. So
I love it. I love it. How interesting. I mean, for me, Charlotte's whole full addiction to rules, the entire first and I think second season is kind of fascinating. And I remember it just being a big challenge to act because it's not me at all. Right. And I grew up in the South where everyone wanted to get married and they were debutantes and all that. And my whole reaction to that is like, ew. And therefore I'm playing one of those women. And I just tried to draw on, people that I knew and kind of the obsession with it. And I think with the obsession, which is really, it's an obsession to an outcome, right?
Yes.
And that's what's great about Charlotte is that her outcomes don't always work out in that way that it's a lesson for her as opposed to somebody who's on that trajectory and then it all works out gloriously, which I don't really know if that happens.
Right.
But I love that about her. She's always like super focused, whether I agree or not. And then she's got a lot of research. Like there's one episode coming where I have a book and I'm like, this book tells you how to get married. And they're all just rolling their every eyeball. It's just rolling and rolling and rolling. But, Charlotte's didactic. She's like committed. She's hardcore, which I love, but it was sometimes hard to play in terms of how could I deepen it out and make it relatable? And what if you weren't one of those people and you were watching it? I didn't want people to hate her. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Or to have her feel like the boring one but it doesn't ever play that way. Maybe it was because, on some level I could relate so much, but in listening to some of your other episodes, the way you talk about needing that voice of reason because the other, you know what I mean? You need those different perspectives to make it feel relatable and real. And for there to be the question mark on the person, like for, Samantha, who's like the whole opposite.
Right.
Someone's got to be the sounding board there for there to be. Because not everyone is Samantha, right?
No. And not everyone's Charlotte. And I think the great thing is that it gave us a way to debate the topics. And because Carrie is a, journalist and really doing research in so many ways, I wonder, blah, 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 blah. It gave different living examples of the different ideas, which was great. And that's why we can still talk about it, I think, in so many ways, the reason that it's still interesting. So, I mean, when they have this whole conversation, it's, it's of course always scary to talk about these things in your own life and you're happily married, which, I admire you and Ben so much. But, I don't even know anymore. Like there's two themes in this episode. One is the secret sex of it all, right? Because Basically, they go out. He takes her to this kind of hole-in-the-wall Chinese restaurant. She thinks it's great the first time they go. Maybe not so much the second time they go, but the first time she's like, this is great. Because it's so New York, right? Like, to me, that's the joy of New York.
Chinese food, there's what's better, right?
Exactly. And sometimes it doesn't have to look glamorous to be good.
Right.
I mean, pretty much all the time, really. Right. So I love that about it. And Sarah Jessica knows like every Chinese restaurant in New York City and is a really good resource if you ever need to know. But I'm sure you don't. So the idea of secret sex and the idea of the rules. And I remember when we did this scene, this was one. When I look back, a lot of the things I don't have super clear memories of because it was like 8 million years ago. But this was a good bonding. This was because we didn't really have coffee shop scenes yet, which I really miss when I'm watching, which is funny because they're so hard to film, as I'm sure you would understand. All of us, every angle of everyone eating and eating, for an entire 16-hour day. But I do miss them now when I'm looking back. So this is almost like a coffee shop scene just in her apartment, right?
Exactly.
And I love that we're there for her. And I love that it's a good example of like everyone with their viewpoint, right? Everyone's got their different viewpoint. But we know that the stakes are so high because we know how much she's liked Big for a while. And they have this whole like interesting, flirtation that's not obvious, but they're...
And he's so elusive. He's...
Right.
What are his intentions? You're very question marky about him from the get-go, but he's got a grip on her, right?
He's got a grip on her for sure.
Episode 1. Yeah.
For sure. And they play it so well, I think.
Yes.
I mean, I hadn't really remembered how many kind of weird interactions they have before they actually date. And the chemistry is so obviously there from the get-go. Right. But also, he is, in my mind, extremely questionable. But this is my mind now. I don't ever remember thinking that back then.
You're right. Right. I don't think for me, and this is, of course, jumping ahead, like, it was playing out in real time and it was like, okay, I see her draw, I get all this, what are his real intentions? But I was always sort of like team Aiden when Aiden came in. That's down, that you're not going to get to that for a while on the podcast.
I'm not, but it's super interesting. It's super interesting. But I also, Charlotte was such a, big. Though when I look back on it, I'm like, why? He's a problem.
Right. And also, like, even when you see it and knowing like where things go and all the ups and downs and the, where the series goes, it's like, even early on, it's like he's got moments where you're like, what a jerk.
I know. And one of those moments, okay, so she puts on this gorgeous dress.
Yes,
she looks like $1 million, right? And it's the dress that she wears for the cover of her book or whatever, and they put it on the bus. And she decides to wear that. And of course, Charlotte is like doubtful that this is a good idea or whatever, but obviously she looks amazing. She walks out. She puts on the vintage first. She walks out. And he says, interesting dress. And she says, meaning? And he says, interesting dress. And I'm like, ew.
I know. That's like so smug.
Right?
Ella and I were both like, he's so mean.
Right? I know. It's like negging. I don't even know if that had been, invented yet or whatever, or written about. But, that whole thing. And I have had men try to neg me before. And I'm like, get away from me now. Like, do not say anything negative to me. It's not going to work out, especially if you just met me. It's crazy.
It's like a reverse psychology, but it doesn't work.
No, it's terrible. So anyway, the weird part of this is they get in the car and pretty quickly they're just making out. And I'm just like, Carrie.
Right.
Carrie. Right. Oh, my gosh. But whatever. At the time, Charlotte didn't feel that way, but I feel this way looking back on it. The other thing that I think of, and I wanted to ask you this just as an actor.
Yeah.
There is a funny quality to almost all of the sex scenes up to this point of this like frenetic frenzy thing.
Right.
Do you remember this in time?
I don't remember it in real time. I really don't.
It's odd. Like, what on earth? Like, do people actually do this? I don't think so.
Right. Like walking in from a doorway and
I gotta pull your clothes off. And I feel it was coming in a way from the Melrose 90210 vibe. I think that was going on there too.
Right.
Right. Like this kind of, it's like a heightened, I don't know if it it doesn't seem sexy to me at all.
I know it does not feel realistic, but it's like there's something, I guess, for a viewer that's and also when you've got like less than 30 minutes to show an episode.
Yeah,
like,
good point.
You're not getting the time to do a lot of that, but I do think there's probably like this sort of like titillation of like, oh, that's somebody's fantasy that's how it would happen.
Is it?
But it's just, I don't know. It's
whose fantasy is that? I want to know. Is it men's fantasy? See, this is one thing I'm really interested in looking back on, the viewpoint of what we were doing. And it does kind of, I mean, luckily we have the sex scenes or the scenes after the sex, right? So like they show Carrie and Big after sex and she tries to talk to him. Right. Yes, and he's also aloof then. Right, which I'm just like, girl.
It was kind of like he almost does an eye roll almost when she's like, I think it's when she goes, I didn't plan on this happening, and he kind of does. Right. Like, well, like clearly we both kind of planned on this happening, and you wore that dress. So what was that? Right? And
I mean, I kind of get that because she did wear that dress, I guess. But I also feel like, it's that weird thing of like our men and women are on different planets. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And as soon as she left the apartment after talking as soon as she leaves, after she talks to you all, I can't remember. And I watched it twice because I know you talked about it too. I had no memory of the breaking the fourth wall, talking to the camera.
Oh, it's hysterical, isn't it?
And it's very inconsistent throughout.
It's inconsistent because Sarah Jessica did not enjoy it.
It's funny because it almost felt like it was in the pilot and then it went away and then it suddenly reappeared in like episode 4 or 5 where
it's true.
Suddenly she was doing a lot of it, but
I know.
And there's still narration, so it's almost like why?
There's narration, and then there's also the people on the street talking to the camera.
Right.
I feel like that was a very important idea in the beginning to Darren, and we have to ask Darren, but that made it seem more like these universal questions, right? Like let's talk to all these New Yorkers about these ideas.
Let's just find a random, person A, B, C, D and get there.
Exactly.
And it's that thing that you like, if you're going to do that, then you commit. And obviously in this first season of a show, you're figuring it out. Like, is this working?
And thank goodness they let us. They really gave us so much space and room to figure it out. Because back then, and this was unusual back then, we filmed the whole thing before it was on the air, which back then, that wasn't how things were. But now with streaming, that is how things are. It's super interesting to me. Yeah. Okay, so Carrie goes off and she has sex with Big, as we know. And after he kind of disses her dress or whatever. I don't know what he's doing there. We'd have to read his mind somehow, which obviously is impossible to do. Now we've got Miranda and Skipper, which is pretty funny. He disappears. He just disappears. And there's a new guy for her that she meets at the gym.
It's so funny. But then Skipper comes back.
He does come back, which surprised me. I don't remember this. Do you know what I mean? It's all very interesting.
Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang just won Podcast of the Year at this year's iHeart Podcast Awards.
Oh, wow. You're kidding. Stop it.
Lady Gaga will take home the Innovator Award at Monday's iHeartRadio Music Awards. Now, these iHeart Award winners are teaming up on a brand new episode of Las Culturistas.
Thank you so much for having me here, but please don't make me get angry about anything in public.
Just open the free iHeartRadio app, search Las Culturistas, and listen now.
Love at first swipe? I highly doubt it.
What's your biggest red flag?
No. What's your ultimate green flag?
These days, reality TV and social media have us thinking love is instant. We're marrying strangers at first sight, we're finding love through walls, or we're even judging people by balloon pops.
But what really makes a relationship last? On this episode of Dope Labs, poet, author, and relationship expert Young Pueblo breaks down the psychology and biology of loving better. And he provides eye-opening insights and advice that we all need.
It's a big realization moment that you should not be postponing your happiness. Like, your greatest happiness is not necessarily going to come from a relationship. Your partner, they should add to your happiness, but your happiness is really coming from within you.
Listen to Dope Labs on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Pod of Rebellion, our new Star Wars Rebels rewatch podcast. I'm Vanessa Marshall.
Hi, I'm Tia Sircar.
I'm Taylor Gray.
And I'm John Lee Brody.
But you may also know us as Harrison Dula, Spectre 2.
Sabine Wren, Spectre 5.
And Ezra Bridger, Spectre 6 from Star Wars Rebels.
Wait, I wasn't on Star Wars Rebels. Am I in the right place?
Absolutely.
Each week, we're going to rewatch and discuss an episode from the series.
And share some fun behind-the-scenes stories.
Sometimes we'll be visited by special guests like Steve Bloom voices Zabarelli Spectre 4, or Dante Bosco voices Jaikel, and many others.
Sometimes we'll even have a lively debate.
And we'll have plenty of other fun surprises and trivia too.
Oh, and me? Well, I'm the lucky Ghost Crew stowaway who gets to help moderate and guide the discussion each week. Kind of like how Kanan guided Ezra in the ways of the Force. You see what I did there?
Nicely done, John.
Thanks, Tia.
So, hang on, because it's going to be a fun ride.
Cue the music.
Listen to Pod of Rebellion on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mark Seal.
And I'm Nathan King.
This is Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli.
The five families did not want us to shoot that picture.
Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli is based on my co-host Mark's best-selling book of the same title. And on this show, we call upon his years of research to help unpack the story behind The Godfather's birth from start to finish.
This is really the first interview I've done in bed.
We sift through innumerable accounts.
35 pages isn't very much.
Many of them conflicting.
That's nonsense. There were 60 pages.
And try to get to the truth of what really happened.
And they said, we're finished. This is over. Not only is not going to work, you gotta get rid of those guys. It's a disaster.
Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli features new and archival interviews with Francis Ford Coppola, Robert Evans, James Caan, Talia Shire, and many others.
Yes, that was a real horse's head.
Listen and subscribe to Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, y'all, it's your girl Cheekies, and I'm back with a brand new season of your favorite podcast, Cheekies and Chill. I'll be sharing even more personal stories with you guys. And I know a lot of people are going to attack me. Why are you going to go visit your dad? Your mom wouldn't be okay with it. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I know my mother. And I know my mom had a very forgiving heart. That is my story on plastic surgery. This is my truth. I think the last time I cried like that was when I lost my mom. Like that, like yelling. I was like, no. I was like, oh, and I thought, what did I do wrong? And as always, you'll get my exclusive take on topics like love, personal growth, health, family ties, and more. And don't forget, I'll also be dishing out my best advice to you on episodes of Dear Cheekies.
So my fiance and I have been together for 10 years. In the first 2 years of being together, I find out he is cheating on me, not only with women, but also with men. What should I do?
Okay, where do I start? That's not love. He doesn't love you enough, because if he loved you, he'd be faithful. It's going to be an exciting year, and I hope that you can join me. Listen to Cheekies and Chill Season 4 as part of the My Cultura Podcast Network, available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, this whole storyline with Miranda, wow.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it's pretty interesting. So she's going out with this guy. He looks so vanilla, you know,
Yes.
really, really normal.
Yes.
Really just like any dude in New York to me. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know if that's right. But then his name is Ted Baker, which also like, isn't that a shoe brand or a clothes brand or something?
Ted Baker, and then Carrie's friend's name is something else that's also a kind of vanilla-ish.
Right. I mean, really, like, they're just, like, trying to be everyman type situation. And also, Carrie has so many friends. Like, she's best friends with Skipper, which is odd.
I was like, why is Stanford not, like, why is it this new guy in this episode? But again,
exactly.
Season 1, figuring things out.
Right. No, I know. And then he goes, thank goodness, we have much more Stanny coming up. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to that actor. He was fine.
No.
But I think it's like a vehicle to tell these other stories, I think.
For sure.
You know?
For sure.
Yeah. So Skipper has disappeared strangely with no story, which is interesting.
Yeah.
We find out the next episode something, and then we've got this new dude, Ted Baker, and a kiss on the street is kind of adorable. He's going to call her. I mean, sometimes when I look at this, it just makes me so nostalgic for old New York. Not that it's not still wonderful, but like old New York was, good.
And that really is how you would meet people. Like, I mean, that you would be at the gym or at a bar or wherever you would be, you'd be out and some interaction. And it wasn't the apps and it wasn't any of those things. It was real life, real social situations, being in person, and there's either a spark or not, or an attraction or a flirtation. And that is, Miranda, that made us laugh out loud too, of like, I was like, what's the setup going to be? And then she kicks him in the face and it's
so cute.
At gym class, which I thought was really
gym class.
It wasn't like the boxing gym. It wasn't during her workout. It was at gym class, which made
gym class. Like we're in grade school. It's so incredibly cute. And also, I remember this was, there's like different phases of workout trends. I remember this phase, and I did go to a boxing class in LA where everybody was just randomly kicking like at the hanging bags, and like everyone got kicked, I think. I did not date anyone from there, but I did go, and I did wear other people's boxing gloves, which is kind of gross.
It's so gross.
Right? I know.
Yeah, I know. Different
it was
time.
The 90s.
Very different time.
Yeah, different time. So they kiss on the street, which for me is so nostalgic and beautiful. I just love the kissing on the street of, basic strangers. It's interesting to think about. It seems very nostalgic to me. And then I don't know if I should jump ahead because I just love what happens with the storyline. And part of the reason I love what happens with the storyline is that this guy, I think, plays it so well. Can't remember the actor's name right now. I have it written somewhere, but he's so kind of lovely and regular, right?
Yeah. And saying how much he missed her while he was at work today.
Right. It's so sweet. Yeah. It's so sweet. And he says, stay in my apartment. I'm just going to cut to the whole storyline because I think it's very interesting.
Definitely.
He says, stay in my apartment. And she's like, okay. The second he leaves, Miranda jumps up and starts going through his things, which I was a little surprised.
But I would 100% have done that.
Really?
Yes.
I definitely did that in my 20s, I want to say.
1,000,000%.
Would you? Okay. Would you immediately?
I mean, making sure enough time had passed that he was really gone and come back in. But for sure, going through, just gotta gather information, right?
I guess so. I mean, now we can look at people's Instagram and whatnot.
That's true. We didn't have that back then.
We didn't. We needed information.
Oh my God. Yes.
Right. So she finds a porn magazine about spanking. And she's kind of like a little miffed, which is also kind of funny because she's Miranda.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And spanking kind of seems pretty benign to today's world, I feel like, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But she has to go and talk to Carrie about it. She takes the magazine, doesn't she?
Well, it's a video, and she's
oh my God.
Right. Because I think in the drawer there's it must be his porn drawer or something.
It's a spanking drawer. It's a drawer of spanking things. Yes.
And she pulls out the video, and the next scene she's playing the video for Carrie.
Right. And this is very reminiscent. So Carrie's already had to watch the modelizer having sex secretly filming the models.
Yes.
And then has to have a cigarette and act like it's fine. Now we've got Miranda with this spanking video. Soon we're going to have all of us watching the people in the window. Do you remember this when we turn our heads sideways? Because we're watching people have sex, which we hired 2 porn actors for. Side note. Yes, amazing. Which I remember we were semi-traumatized about it.
I'm sure.
Though, more power to them, right? But it's a kind of a theme in the beginning. I guess it makes sense because Carrie is trying to, investigate relationships and sex and what do people like? What do people do? So this poor guy likes spanking and Miranda's very torn about it. Okay. What do I do? What do I do about it? And then later on, I'm just going to jump to the best part, I think. Later on, she brings it up kind of casually on the street, I might add.
And that I would never do.
No, she just but it's so Miranda, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Because she's kind of a bull in a china shop in many ways, you know what I mean? Yes. She'll just say stuff like, la, 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 It's kind of like that. Though I did think she tried to kind of
be sexy about it. And also, because I think Carrie also says to her, you can't know until you try it, kind of. And then she goes, I'm joking. But the seed got planted of maybe this could be fun.
Right, totally. But this poor guy is just so mortified And the actor plays it so sweetly. Like if you found out that he was a serial killer or something, like he looks just so embarrassed.
And defeated.
And sad.
My secret is no longer a secret.
It's so sad. And then she never hears from him again.
Ever. Doesn't return. And that's like in the narration, it's like he never returned her calls. They didn't go home that night. Like
it's just so sad. It's so sad. And it makes me think about secrets and, you know, people's secrets and how you think that your secret is so terrible. And then you find out later. And I do feel now in the age of the apps and all the different things, you know, that there's a lot less secrets kept. Do you feel that?
Right. I feel, well, it's almost like, I mean, yeah, you have to work a lot harder, I think, to keep a secret in this sort of digital age where everything is documented, everything is, you can track, like even like back in the day, if someone said to us, you know, like, oh, you know, I can't, you know, and I'm sure there's been episodes. I feel like there might have even been of like, no, maybe it was in the pilot, where he just kind of ghosts her, and it's like, my mother's sick, but now all you have to do is go to their social media to like, and if they're out somewhere else, then you can check.
You can check on all the stuff.
And I feel like having a daughter in her like the impact social media has for this generation, particularly, like it's like it's how they function. She even said, Ella even told me last night, like there's like getting invited to parties. There's like an app that you get invited through, and then you see the RSVP, and it's like,
wow,
it's, you know, like not just simple basic Evite. There's like a whole like 20s thing that for party.
Oh my God. Who knew?
But it's a lot. It's like a lot.
Oh God. I hope it all works out for them.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? Like,
Praying.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they do have a lot of awareness, like you said, which is really important. And I do feel, I mean, to me, secrets are not great, right? So like in some ways, that's a great thing to have more freedom about like, well, this is what I like. You know, this is what I don't like. Like that is a good development, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
and I think if you're somebody who's like confident and comfortable and okay, like, you know, the more information you give early on in dating or meeting somebody, like the less hurt you're going to down the line feel, right? You know what I mean? Like if either it's going to feel good or not, you know, like,
I like that.
Yeah. Like it's going to work or not, but I don't know. Like as sort of a self-proclaimed people pleaser, that's a difficult thing to do. Like, like there's one of the earlier episodes, and I don't want to get off track because we have a lot to cover, but one of the earlier episodes where, you know, the one, I think it's the one, where the guy wants to ask Carrie to marry her and then he takes you for
Yeah.
And like, she's so straightforward when she realizes like, she's like, I'm sort of just trying you on. And you know what I mean? And it's true.
I do. It's great.
That's what you sort of want to do, but then you want to just be honest, but it's very hard because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. You don't want them to hate you. You don't want it to end bitterly or for there to be bad feelings about it. So,
oh gosh,
that's why I love that there's so many different points of view from each of you and how you manage those situations.
It's true. I also love because then Charlotte dates him, which is interesting because it would make sense because they theoretically want the same thing. Exactly. But then Charlotte is so incredibly picky that when he doesn't like the china she likes, she's like, no. And I love that because I don't really remember all that. And to me, it just speaks to like Charlotte really has like a steel center. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. That's such a great way to put it. Such a great way to put it, too.
She may not seem it, you know, like you don't necessarily realize it. She's all like, ha, 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 you know, whatever. Yeah. She seems giggly and girly, but like inside there's like rock hard steel, you know? Yes. It's interesting to me. Yeah. It's interesting to me. But let's talk about the secret sex thing, because I do think this is interesting. And even with the digital media, social media age, I do feel like it's still true that there would be people that you might go out with or you might have sex with and you would not want people to know. So you would not be posting them. You would not post where you go. You know, there's this whole thing about like going Instagram official, right? That's like has to be, I mean, I think still, I don't know if I'm that objective about this, but you don't do that unless you're serious, right? So there is still a way to try to keep secrets in this day and age that everyone kind of knows everything.
Yes.
And I'm interested in, I wonder, I don't know if you and I are the best people to ask, but it's interesting to me, like, what are the ideas now of who you're supposed to be with? Like, is that still functioning?
Right. Like, I mean, I think it really depends. Well, watching this episode, and this will play into it slightly, I think, because where she talks to the friend and the friend is like, no, where Carrie starts to like now realize when he's not introducing her, when he brings her back to the restaurant where her friend brought the girl
second time.
Want to be seen. It literally made me think of like Ben and I went on our first date, and Ben was Ben Stiller. Like he had been
already, yeah.
It was like there's something about Mary had come out. It was a huge.
Right.
We worked together. That's how we met. Like he cast something. He was directing me. We had like laughed a lot, and like we were both like sort of getting out of relationships and sort of in this like rebound where he was like, "Hey, do you want to have dinner?" And like. But he was still Ben Stiller. So like he attracted attention wherever he went. And I, at the time, was living off of Laurel Canyon on the valley side of Laurel Canyon. And he came to pick me up and really casually, like, and I laugh now because I was like, I so got it without him having to say it. And it was his way of like not wanting to offend me. But like, he's like, yeah. And this was before like the Valley. Now Studio City is so like, it's happening. It's the happening spot.
Yeah.
It's, 25 years ago. And it was, and he just was like, hey, I love the Valley. I don't go to a lot of restaurants in the Valley. Like, is there like, are there any good restaurants that you like over here? And between the lines, what I was reading was literally like, this is a first date. The last thing we want is for paparazzi to catch a picture and there to be some sort of story. You know what I mean? It would have just been like, who is Ben Stiller with kind of story. It was not.
Yeah.
And it really made me laugh because like, he didn't think that I knew what he was saying.
But let me ask you, were you offended at all?
I really wasn't because to me,
that's good.
Also, it was this weird thing of like, I'm going on a date with Ben Stiller. Like, what's the reality? Like, this is weird. And I told like a couple of my really close girlfriends, I didn't like call my family and say I'm going on. I was like, I'm going to see what this is because this is very surreal. I literally like was a fan of his films and it was a very strange thing to be, but having just worked with him, we'd spent a couple of weeks together of just, developing a rapport and, but we ended up going to, and I don't know if you remember it, Michelli's in the Valley.
Sure.
With the singing waiters. Like,
oh my gosh. That's insane.
Yes, that was our first date.
Oh my God, adorable.
And we had a blast because the waiters sing show tunes and we're both like musical theater nerds.
Yeah.
But I wasn't offended because I was equally as like, talking about secrets. It was sort of like, I wanted this to feel like a secret for me in a way, because I didn't want people to be so intrigued or have opinions or.
Well, there's pressure from that.
And there's stories that people with, going out with Ben Stiller, like whatever. I wanted it to be our thing. So I felt like it was sexual, but it was just sort of how he.
It's really funny. I like it. But then my question would be, what happened on the second date? Did you also go to a restaurant in the Valley? And did it bother you then? Like, at what point?
No, I feel like we started spending a lot of time very quickly. And then, it wasn't even like he was going to New York to shoot a movie pretty soon after that. So it was almost like we had this like fun time together for like, over the course of a week or two. And then he was leaving for New York. And it was like that talk of like, hey, I'm going to be in New York for the next 3 months. And like, maybe if you're back East, we'll do this. We're very loose about it. And he landed in New York and it was spring in New York. And the next day it was like, he was in Central Park and I got a call. He was like, So do you think you'd ever want to like come and visit in the next week? It's before we start shooting. It's like, so
that's so cute.
It was like very quick that we were like pretty obsessed with each other. And
love it.
Right?
Amazing. Yeah. But that's so great. But then when you were in New York, could you hide or did you not try?
Then in New York, it was like he was working a lot and I was showing up and like, so it started to become, I mean, it wasn't really like tabloid material, but it was really like, we were just out dating, you know?
You were fine with it.
Yes,
you were fine with it.
Totally
organically.
Fine. Yes. Because
nice.
It felt good.
I love it. I mean, yeah, I feel like that is its own, microcosm of secrets, right? To have to deal with public perception.
Right. That's its own, right.
Right? It's its own thing. But I do feel like when I watch this episode, I'm like, well, I'm really good at secrets and I don't intend to change that. But on the other hand, I feel like it is kind of, I have mixed feelings about it, I guess, because like on the one hand, why should you feel bad about anybody that you're involved with? Why? In this day and age, why should you ever second guess your own attractions?
Well, and that becomes like the bigger question of like, it's all about appearance. Like, I don't want my friends to judge me.
Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang just won Podcast of the Year at this year's iHeart Podcast Awards.
Oh, wow. You're kidding. Stop it.
Lady Gaga will take home the Innovator Award at Monday's iHeart Radio Music Awards. Now, these iHeart Award winners are teaming up on a brand new episode of Las Culturistas.
Thank you so much for having me here, but please don't make me get angry about anything in public.
Just open the free iHeart Radio app, search Las Culturistas, and listen now.
Love at first swipe? I highly doubt it.
What's your biggest red flag?
No. What's your ultimate green flag?
These days, reality TV and social media have us thinking love is instant. We're marrying strangers at first sight, we're finding love through walls, or we're even judging people by balloon pops.
But what really makes a relationship last? On this episode of Dope Labs, poet, author, and relationship expert Young Pueblo breaks down the psychology and biology of loving better. And he provides eye-opening insights and advice that we all need.
It's a big realization moment that you should not be postponing your happiness. Like, your greatest happiness is not necessarily going to come from a relationship. Your partner, they should add to your happiness, but your happiness is really coming from within you.
Listen to Dope Labs on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Cheekies, and I'm back with a brand new season of your favorite podcast, Cheekies and Chill. I'll be sharing even more personal stories with you guys. And I know a lot of people are gonna attack me. Why are you gonna go visit your dad? Your mom wouldn't be okay with it. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, I know my mother. And I know my mom had a very forgiving heart. That is my story on plastic surgery. This is my truth. I think the last time I cried like that was when I lost my mom. Like that, yelling. I was like, no. I was like, oh, and I thought, what did I do wrong? And as always, you'll get my exclusive take on topics like love, personal growth, health, family ties, and more. And don't forget, I'll also be dishing out my best advice to you on episodes of Dear Cheekies.
So my fiance and I have been together for 10 years. In the first 2 years of being together, I find out he is cheating on me, not only with women, but also with men. What should I do?
Okay, where do I start? That's not love. He doesn't love you enough, because if he loved you, he'd be faithful. It's going to be an exciting year, and I hope that you can join me. Listen to Cheekies and Chill Season 4 as part of the My Cultura Podcast Network, available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mark Seal.
And I'm Nathan King.
This is Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli.
The 5 families did not want us to shoot that picture.
Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli is based on my co-host Mark's best-selling book of the same title. And on this show, we call upon his years of research to help unpack the story behind The Godfather's birth from start to finish.
This is really the first interview I've done in bed.
We sift through innumerable accounts.
35 pages isn't very much.
Many of them conflicting.
That's nonsense. There were 60 pages.
And try to get to the truth of what really happened.
And they said, we're finished. This is over. The only's not going to work. You gotta get rid of those guys. It's that.
Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli features new and archival interviews with Francis Ford Coppola, Robert Evans, James Caan, Talia Shire, and many others.
Yes, that was a real horse's head.
Listen and subscribe to Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Pod of Rebellion, our new Star Wars Rebels rewatch podcast. I'm Vanessa Marshall.
Hi, I'm Tia Sircar.
I'm Taylor Gray.
And I'm John Lee Brody.
But you may also know us as Harrison Dula, Spectre 2.
Sabine Wren, Spectre 5.
And Ezra Bridger, Spectre 6 from Star Wars Rebels.
Wait, I wasn't on Star Wars Rebels. Am I in the right place?
Absolutely.
Each week, we're going to rewatch and discuss an episode from the series.
And share some fun behind-the-scenes stories.
Sometimes we'll be visited by special guests like Steve Bloom, voices Zabarelli Spectre 4, or Dante Bosco, voice of Jai Kell, and many others.
Sometimes we'll even have a lively debate.
And we'll have plenty of other fun surprises and trivia too.
Oh, and me? Well, I'm the lucky ghost crew stowaway who gets to help moderate and guide the discussion each week. Kind of like how Kanan guided Ezra in the ways of the Force. You see what I did there?
Nicely done, John.
Thanks, Tia.
So, hang on, because it's going to be a fun ride.
Cue the music.
Listen to Pod of Rebellion on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In this show, the guy who goes out with the girl that he meets at the cheese shop, you know, who's like so amazing and so great. And he says, oh, she's not beautiful enough. I mean, that's about him. That's so fully 100% about him.
Yes. Yes.
And it's so sad.
I know. And I feel
because
like
she's amazing.
I was so happy that that little storyline got tied up in with him saying she dumped me, she found someone else.
Thank God, right?
I was
Thank
so
God.
happy that it wasn't just him getting to have his cake.
I agree because the male guys in the beginning are so incredibly toxic. Like we have that first thing where we label people toxic bachelors.
Yep.
I feel like that could be everybody but Skipper for like the whole first season. I mean, it's so insane, right? They're so awful. And I remember at the time my mom had said to me, my grandmother was living at my house with my parents. And so there had to be this whole kind of secret. I would send mom the VHS tapes to watch secretly because she didn't want grandma to see it. And I remember mom saying, and I had to just be vague when I would see my grandma. I'd be like, yeah, I'm working. And she'd be like, what are you working on? I'd be like, oh, you know, something in New York. Like I couldn't say the title, right, to my 90-something-year-old grandmother. So my mother had said to me, like, you know, I'm just so depressed. This show just makes me so depressed. I was like, Mom, why? It's amazing. You know, there's 4 of us. We're strutting around New York in our outfits. You know, what do you mean? She said, I just don't want to think about this dating world for you. And I was like, oh, whatever. You know, I was just like, puff, you know, Mom. And I look back on it, I completely get what she's saying.
Right. Looking back on it now, right?
Yeah. But I think back then, we were kind of used to this stuff.
Yeah.
Don't you feel?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
Like, I know it was shocking, right? Like edgy and whatnot that we were saying, the things we were saying, but I don't feel like the men and the situations were shocking.
Yes.
You know?
No.
Finance bros and whatnot. Like there's so many.
I know. And I think that was well done. And you know, I think probably as the show goes on and as I kind of rewatch it again as well, because it's just so fun to do it now, to just see the evolution of how that first season, the men are very, it's an exaggeration yet very close to home of what things were.
True.
But for the sake of comedy, you know, for the sake of the laugh.
Of course.
It worked.
It's a little broad for sure. But I also feel, and one of my favorite parts of this particular episode is, so Carrie kind of spins out about Big, you know, after they have sex, and then she goes drunkenly to his apartment. I'm so out of order, but it just brought it up to me. And he really makes sense.
Well, it's so funny that you said that, because when you watch it the first time, because like I said, I rewatched it again this morning, knowing his 3 excuses for the 3 moments that he felt sort of shafted. And then you watch it again. And it is that we've all been in those scenarios where you run into someone you know and you're like, oh, I don't know their name.
Right.
I feel embarrassed. So you kind of wait for the person you're with to either introduce themselves.
Right.
To get the name, but it's that. Yeah. So everything tracked.
It does. It totally tracks when you hear his point of view.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, thank God. Thank God we have a little insight into Big's, mental state and or what he is or is not doing, Right. And then, of course, she feels so embarrassed, which, I've definitely been in this place before, not in a while, thank goodness. But when you just spin out, and she's had a few drinks, of course, so she's even more spun out. And she goes like banging on his door and she's all worked up. And then he's like, what is the big deal? And it's just such an awful feeling as a woman, because you're just oh my God, I'm doing that thing.
I know. It's a little, I'm feeling a little desperate, right?
Right. And also like the emotions, like you just have so many emotions and yet you kind of feel like the men, they just don't want that. They just don't want to know.
Yeah.
It's
no,
sad.
I know. And I think that's also why there's something that works too with Big and Carrie and even through his kind of like, there's an aloofness to him, which I think makes him more attractive to her. But they're also both straight shooters when it comes down to it. Like, you know,
that's a good point.
I feel like he then does have the moment where he's like, hey, no, this is my reality. And, so like, but it's that tug of war attraction of, there's something about that person where it's like not the perfect fit, but that makes you want it more.
Right. But is it ever the perfect fit, Christine? I don't know. Okay.
Never.
Okay. Like, does it exist? I don't know.
It doesn't exist. And if it exists for a period of time, then as you grow, like, I think it just shifts and it evolves.
Right.
And you don't want to have you want someone who pushes you. You want someone who, helps you step outside of your comfort zone. And so I do feel like but what makes me laugh so much in that episode is when they're like, when Samantha's like, did you hear about the rabbi, Charlotte?
I forgot. I totally forgot. Thank you for keeping me on track, Christine.
Yes.
I know, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
And they go to your work?
Yeah. I'm not, he's not a rabbi, thank God. He is a Hasidic folk artist, you guys.
That just made me laugh out loud, just even before the visual of the two of you together. But like
it's pretty funny.
He's not a rabbi.
Thank God. But I mean, hello, we have a whole show about this now. Like nobody wants this. It's so amazing and to think about, right? And also Charlotte ends up with Harry. Like it's foreshadowing so many things that are coming, which I love.
Yes.
But what I love about that particular storyline, and every time I see one of my storylines in the first season, I'm like, oh my God. Like it just seems like 18 lifetimes ago, and I'm like a little child kind of like, and I loved this actor. His name is Glenn Flesher, and he has worked a lot.
I was going to say, I've seen him play bad guys and things like he can play really evil. Like he's
he's so good. Yeah, he's
so good.
Really good. So good. And this was his first acting job.
Stop it. No.
Yes, we heard this from Molly, our costume designer, who was on, and we talked briefly about this episode, and she works with him in the future after this. And he's like, I was the rabbi guy, the artist. She couldn't believe it because he didn't have the whole hair, which I think we put on him. I think we made that happen.
Yes.
And he was working and doing well. I know, it's hysterical, right? And I remember going to Williamsburg. I am like, what planet have we landed on? Because I had never gone to Williamsburg at that point in 1998. I had no idea what was there.
The subculture, right?
Yes, it was a very specific subculture where everyone in this, like maybe 10 block radius are, conservative Jewish people. And you are like a fish out of water. And as we're there filming, I have to walk down the street and they somehow find out what we are, or maybe they think that we're something even worse than what we are. And they basically come and tell us we have to leave. They run us out of Williamsburg.
Oh.
Yeah. They were like, who gave you this permit? You can't be here. What are you wearing? And we were like, oh my gosh, we gotta leave. Ah! We were scared. We didn't want to upset people.
Yeah.
It was very interesting.
Gosh.
I know. But I remember I really liked that guy. I thought he was a good actor. I don't mean like, I just mean he was a good actor and I enjoyed it. And I look back on it now and I feel like Charlotte really is just out there trying stuff. You know, like no matter what she says she wants, she's out there game to try stuff out.
I mean, I feel like that's what makes Charlotte so interesting, because you think she's one thing. And like you said earlier, there's like the steel, she is going and exploring and not, it's being true to herself. It's not like she's making compromises. It's sort of like, I am curious. This is not going to be the person I'm going to end up with, but experience for me.
It's super fascinating.
Like you were intoxicated by his art, by the whole thing, by the, like we've all had those moments too, where you're in like a world totally different than your own. And that's like, it's so interesting and overwhelming and appealing.
Right. I love that. I love it. It's such a funny little like sidebar. Oh yeah. And I also feel it's the thing that we end up getting a little smoother. It's like kind of herky-jerky now, but you know, eventually the way the show would work is we would all have our own storylines and her voiceover would connect them. So they, you know, towards the end of the episode, she'd say like, and then up on the Upper East Side.
Right.
Yeah, and downtown. This
Meanwhile.
Right. So we don't have that totally happening on all cylinders yet, but it's starting to happen, you know, which I really love. And we don't have the coffee shop scenes, which I also really miss, which is funny to me because we did curse them a lot when we were doing them, but now I miss them.
Oh, see how nostalgic you get?
I know, right? About the strangest things. Okay, I've gone so out of order, but are there like shocking things that I haven't said? Maybe.
No, because I took a lot of notes too.
You did? I'm so impressed, Christine. Oh my gosh.
I think also because I've been like started the binge, I didn't want to mix up great moments in other episodes that you've already talked about.
I did a bad thing last night and then I watched the next one because I got confused about what number we were on. And now I'm all like, rah!
I know. Ella and I almost did that. And she goes, no, you should stop now. And then we'll just continue.
She was right. She was so right. We talked about Miranda and that sweet poor guy that she embarrasses.
Yeah. Well, and the bus reveal, the Carrie, like when they...
Oh, the Carrie bus reveal, which I do remember because it's like 5 degrees and I was going to say,
was it pouring rain, right? And you're all...
That's why we're huddled under the bus stop.
No, it looked blustery.
Yeah,
really
I think I'm
York.
shivering. I'm literally like, you know, when you're really trying not to shiver when they say rolling?
Yes.
It's the worst. It's the worst. And we're trying to be so jovial. And then this guy comes, her friend, Mike or whatever his name is, right?
Who we never see again, right?
Yeah, I know. It's super interesting. But apparently she is friends with so many people.
Well, that's what I think that's the setup too, is that she is the quintessential, you know, she knows a lot of people. She's, you know, uses her resources. And like you said, it's a great storytelling device, you know, to be able to.
It's so true. Now, the thing that also happens on the bus, which to me is so also foreshadowing of our lives in real life, is that so she's got this glamorous, you know, advertisement on the side of the bus. She's wearing this glamorous dress, and then someone has graffitied male private parts close to her mouth. And, you know, it is like what happens when you put yourself out there as a woman in our society. You know what I'm saying? Like you are going to get some, you know, some flack.
You still see it in New York. I mean, I live in New York now, and you still see that sort of graffiti, like in, you know, with against a beautiful woman or whatever the ad is for, and it's all over the place. It was just what's so crazy too. And I turned to Ella to say in that moment is like, as the friends of seeing that too, like, you know, of course it's like horrifying for her, but it's also like it's just like, yeah, that's New York. Like this is our weird city that we live in. Like
so true.
Why couldn't the one thing that I was doing be beautiful? And it's New York City.
I know
it's messy and
that's true.
What I was reminded of is like in that moment we would have, but back then you didn't have camera on the cell phone.
Right. No.
Someone would have gotten the picture and been able to crop that part out.
Good point. Yeah. Good point. But we're there because we don't have the ability, you know, it's interesting. Right. Yeah. I love that also.
So she has to just live with her own it's like embedded in her skull. And that's also plays into, I think, why she needs to confront Big and why she needs to go there, because it's like,
Definitely.
and this disaster, and he didn't show up to my thing, and there's a penis next to my
right.
photo
How
shoot.
mortifying. Well, it's someone just taking you down, someone taking you down a notch, right? So
yes.
She starts the episode and she's wearing her fabulous dress. She's at her photo shoot. Then she's showing us the fabulous dress and things are going great. And then things don't seem like they're going as great as she thinks. Yeah. Which is how life is, isn't it? It really is. It really is. I know. But then, and one of my questions, and I mean, I could ask this at any given point at any of these episodes. Do we believe Big at this point?
I mean, I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm still, I don't want to, because I know that there's a whole
so much coming
cityverse of people who have strong opinions. But it's like, I still just don't really like him, but I understand Carrie's, and he said all the right things in that moment. She's tipsy.
Yeah.
He gave her, and they're all legit reasons. And she's like,
true.
This is, and she has that moment of like, so this is like a real thing. And and I forget what he says at the end, but then obviously it's the happy ending. They end up, they're going to sleep together again.
Right.
She's got him, or so we think, I didn't go ahead. I didn't jump ahead like you did.
Right. This is what he says. He says, she says, so you and me, maybe this is for real. And he responds, could be.
No, I knew, but kisses her.
Yeah, of course. I mean, his actions say yes, but his words do not say yes. It's just so frustrating. He picks her up and carries her into the room.
Okay.
It's so interesting to watch back now, because I really never in my mind did I think he's kind of weird and mixed messages and aloof and whatever. I never once thought that.
Interesting.
Ever.
Right.
I know. Well, it just goes to show, I need some adjustments. But it looks like it's happened over the years, because now I totally think that watching him. Like, what is wrong?
Sure. And I can't remember at the time. Like I said, I in my memory of the show, the relationship that I remember enjoying the most was when she was with Aiden. Like
that's great. I think that's great. I think it's a healthier relationship.
I remember in real time thinking, oh, what's the appeal with him? I don't, but watching it now, I'm sort of like so annoyed that she's like taking the bait and taking the bait.
It's true. But I will say this. I think the thing that I am also kind of surprised by when I look at all the men in the show, not the men that she's with or flirting with or whatever, they're very like Big is kind of in terms of achievement and intellect, which is very important to Carrie, right? Like she, when she does the crossword puzzle, which I think was last time he's doing the crossword puzzle, and she's like, that's the word, which is so Sarah Jessica also.
Or something, right?
Exactly, right, exactly. There's, and then you look at, like, for instance, the 20-something guy episode. Hinge, very good. Hinge, which is kind of funny because Hinge, but whatever. She's got the young boys who want, and then like the next episode is Justin Theroux's first episode, and she kind of flirts with him. He's a writer, but he's a writer that has some success, but when you look at how he is, he's not enough for her. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing about Big.
That was the other thing I genuinely had completely forgotten is where the name Big had come from. Like, and in the pilot, it's the way Samantha's like, oh, he's this big real estate mogul. I think you might even say like the next Donald Trump. Is it?
I think we do say that.
Like, but so that gives you the sense of like what his status is, and also his aloofness too, of like, he is taking meetings. He does have a crazy schedule, and
and he has a driver, and he has a like corded phone in the back of the car, which is so hysterical. There's a cord.
It's like a driver to a weird like sedan.
It's the black like Buick or whatever Cadillac. I don't know what it is. Town car, I guess. I mean, it's really funny. But I think, and he's based on a real person. I don't know if we've said this yet, but he is based on a real person that Candace Bushnell was involved with, who was a big publishing person. I'm not going to go further than that. You can look it up if you guys want.
Right.
But I feel like I don't even know if it's fair to say who these people were based on. Do you know what I'm saying? Because many things have happened since then.
Right.
Inspired by. I like that. That's a good way to go, Christine. That's a good way to go. Yes.
Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang just won Podcast of the Year at this year's iHeart Podcast Awards.
Oh, wow. You're kidding. Stop it.
Lady Gaga will take home the Innovator Award at Monday's iHeartRadio Music Awards. Now, these iHeart Award winners are teaming up on a brand new episode of Las Culturistas.
Thank you so much for having me here, but please don't make me get angry about anything in public.
Just open the free iHeartRadio app, search Las Culturistas, and listen now.
Love at first swipe? I highly doubt it.
What's your biggest red flag?
No. What's your ultimate green flag?
These days, reality TV and social media have us thinking love is instant. We're marrying strangers at first sight, we're finding love through walls, or we're even judging people by balloon pops.
But what really makes a relationship last? On this episode of Dope Labs, poet, author, and relationship expert Young Pueblo breaks down the psychology and biology of loving better. And he provides eye-opening insights and advice that we all need.
It's a big realization moment that you should not be postponing your happiness. Like, your greatest happiness is not necessarily going to come from a relationship. Your partner, they should add to your happiness, but your happiness is really coming from within you.
Listen to Dope Labs on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mark Seal.
And I'm Nathan King.
This is Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli.
The 5 families did not want us to shoot that picture.
Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli is based on my co-host Mark's best-selling book of the same title. And on this show, we call upon his years of research to help unpack the story behind the Godfather's birth from start to finish.
This is really the first interview I've done in bed.
We sift through innumerable accounts.
35 pages isn't very much.
Many of them conflicting.
That's nonsense. There were 60 pages.
And try to get to the truth of what really happened.
And they said, we're finished. This is over. Not only is not going to work, you gotta get rid of those guys. It's a disaster.
Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli features new and archival interviews with Francis Ford Coppola, Robert Evans, James Caan, Talia Shire, and many others.
Yes, that was a real horse's head.
Listen and subscribe to Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Pod of Rebellion, our new Star Wars Rebels rewatch podcast. I'm Vanessa Marshall.
Hi, I'm Tia Sircar.
I'm Taylor Gray.
And I'm John Lee Brody.
But you may also know us as Harrison Dula, Spectre 2.
Sabine Wren, Spectre 5.
And Ezra Bridger, Spectre 6 from Star Wars Rebels.
Wait, I wasn't on Star Wars Rebels. Am I in the right place?
Absolutely.
Each week, we're going to rewatch and discuss an episode from the series.
And share some fun behind-the-scenes stories.
Sometimes we'll be visited by special guests like Steve Bloom voices Zabarelio Spectre 4, or Dante Bosco voices Jaikel, and many others.
Sometimes we'll even have a lively debate.
And we'll have plenty of other fun surprises and trivia too.
Oh, and me? Well, I'm the lucky ghost crew stowaway who gets to help moderate and guide the discussion each week. Kind of like how Kanan guided Ezra in the ways of the Force. You see what I did there?
Nicely done, John.
Thanks, Tia.
So, hang on, because it's going to be a fun ride.
Cue the music.
Listen to Pod of Rebellion on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Cheekies, and I'm back with a brand new season of your favorite podcast, Cheekies and Chill. I'll be sharing even more personal stories with you guys. And I know a lot of people are going to attack me. Why are you going to go visit your dad? Your mom wouldn't be okay with it. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I know my mother. And I know my mom had a very forgiving heart. That is my story on plastic surgery. This is my truth. I think the last time I cried like that was when I lost my mom. Like that, like yelling. I was like, no. I was like, oh, and I thought, what did I do wrong? And as always, you'll get my exclusive take on topics like love, personal growth, health, family ties, and more. And don't forget, I'll also be dishing out my best advice to you on episodes of Dear Cheekies.
So my fiance and I have been together for 10 years. In the first 2 years of being together, I find out he is cheating on me, not only with women, but also with men. What should I do?
Okay, where do I start? That's not love. He doesn't love you enough, because if he loved you, he'd be faithful. It's going to be an exciting year, and I hope that you can join me. Listen to Chiquis and Chill Season 4 as part of the My Cultura podcast network, available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The time I remember wherever we would go, people would say, oh, like if we went to an event, they'd be like, that girl over there is who Charlotte's based on. And I'd be like, really? Oh my God. I guess I better go investigate this girl.
Right.
Woman, whatever.
Right.
And I mean, who knows? Like at a certain point, like half of New York was who we were based on. You know, it was.
That's right. That's exactly right. I think but what I love so much is just the, I think Ella kind of put it, well, as we were sort of talking about it, because Ella, having rewatched it more recently than me, was like, you're such a Charlotte. When I told her about doing this, she's like, but sprinkled, she goes, but I think everybody has a sprinkle of Carrie, because Carrie, as the narrator, we're seeing the show through her lens, we're all supposed to relate to her in a way, like, right? She's, so she was like, and maybe a little Miranda, but no Samantha.
I mean, sometimes I think no Miranda too. It depends on the episode, right? Like
depends on the episode.
Yeah, it depends on the episode. But she kind of, I mean, I'm so watching everybody's performance. Like, first of all, I just am, I'm so blown away by Sarah Jessica. I think to myself, like, why didn't I go to work every day that she was working and study what she was doing? Like, she is so incredible.
No. And you talked about it a little bit in, I think, one of your first or second episodes, but just the subtlety and what she's doing, she's like, having met her a few times and know her a tiny bit, like, she's so brilliant, just like in the brain, but
yeah,
comedian, she's real, she's herself.
She's so present.
And I love when you talked about them wanting you to cut your hair for the pilot, and her saying, "Why did you cut?" And you're like, "Now I know who I need to go to."
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that was like a bellwether moment of like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, somebody. Right. Exactly. But even Ella, just having the experience of like working on set, but all of you. I mean, she's really said it about all of you. Of just it was really her first big job on being able
I didn't realize.
Spend a couple of days. She's done little teeny things here and there, but most theater and just to get to watch you all, it was, she just said, like a master class in, and also really had a good laugh about some of the wardrobe and how that literally plays into getting in and out of a doorway. I was thinking about that. Because the wardrobe,
the whole thing
in this first season has not gotten to be what it comes.
Right. We're developing. We had Molly on, our costume designer, who at the beginning was I think listed as costume supervisor.
Okay.
And you can just see it beginning, and it really begins with Sarah Jessica, because Sarah Jessica already had the relationships with the designers, and we needed to borrow things. But what Molly told me, which I had forgotten, is that basically the rest of our costumes are coming from Bloomingdale's and Century 21.
See, that is so off-brand when you think of Sex and the City. Like,
I know.
In fact, doesn't Sarah Jessica or Carrie has that joke about the guy she's trying on? It's kind of like a DKNY dress. Like, you want to try it on, but it's not for you. Like, it's not exactly for everyone. So I find it, and the way each of you and your fashion develops and becomes, sort of an extension of your personalities, and it's brilliant how it evolves. And this is just a great podcast. It's a great way to revisit something that's so beloved for so many of us.
Thank you. It's fun. It's such a kind of therapeutic and interesting thing for me, right? Because I had never rewatched.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine going back, and especially still being in it with and just like that.
Well, I think that really helps, right? Because I feel like if we weren't together anymore, if we didn't get to be together anymore, it would be more sad for me to look back, I feel. But because we've had this incredible journey that we never in a million hundred years would have guessed in the beginning. I mean, we were just so excited to get to do 13 episodes. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like that was a miracle, right? And now to imagine all the things that we've gotten to do over time, which we've had to fight for every single time. And it's never handed to us. As you know, nothing is really handed to any of us in this business, even at the tippy top, which we're not. But you know what I'm saying?
Yes. It's never a given.
You have to fight.
Never,
you have to fight for it. Yep. But it's been so worth it and so incredible. And the real reason, and the reason I kind of wanted to do the podcast is that it's all because of these fans, you know, and the fans who've been with us since the beginning, and also this whole new, you know, multiple generations. It's
multi-generational. Absolutely. And that's why I think it's really like, but it's still, you look at a different period of time and you can pick out things like the way you talked about New York looks a little different, the clothes or whatever it is, but there are still very sort of fundamental issues that women deal with collectively. And yes, there's been some growth in some of them, but still at the core, it's really like the struggles we all feel about, like, what do I want? What do I want? Right?
Right. Who am I? Who do I want to be with?
Existential questions that like are very hard to answer, but you guys get to do it in a way that, you know, you're echoing our thoughts. Right. And so. Yeah, it's special. It's
Thank you. It is special. It's so special to have you on with me. I appreciate it so much.
Yes. Oh, and the one thing I was going to say was that I listened to the first part of the Michael Patrick King episode, and I loved what he said. I never even thought about it when he said, you never see the parents of anybody except for a couple of the in-laws, and one of them being Ben's mother, who played Steve.
I know.
And Mira playing. And I thought, and when he said it too, I was like, he's like, how many people when you moved to New York were you meeting their parents? Like at the transplant, most everybody came from somewhere else, right? Like unless somebody was a native New Yorker, maybe that was the family you knew. But I just thought that was so interesting that throughout the series, that's not something you see. You know?
No, I know. We took so many weird chances. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do remember at the time, because when you're trying to figure a character out, you're thinking, well, who are her parents? How did she become like this? And so you're trying to fill it all in yourself. Yeah. And, you know, little by little details come out. Like at some point I say, I went to Smith, which of course makes so much sense. And, you know, little bits. And then you meet my brother, which is very strange, which we touched on with Michael Patrick. Very, very strange episode. And then he's never discussed again. But it was a challenge in that way. And that's why I do think at a certain point I thought, gosh, I need to maybe investigate these women that I keep hearing I'm based on, because maybe I can figure out who they are, and that will inform Charlotte. So I do remember going up to the Upper East Side and like just kind of walking around, like stalking these women who looked like kind of like Charlotte's, like what stores are they going to go into? Like basic little tiny details I'm trying to find out, because I'm not really, you know, like a New York, you know, I mean, I would also go to the art galleries, and that was really fun.
Yes.
That was the best part in so many ways. But I mean, it was all fun, really. And interesting in that I think also because our writers were so great and HBO let us find ourselves, you know, through the process.
Yeah, what a gift.
So it was kind of this amazing melding of us as actors with our parts, you know, which is such a joy and a rarity, and
oh my gosh,
like priceless.
And to become as iconic, right? Like as it's always those moments where when it's something special, it's the right people at the right time in the right place, and then the magic happens. And I just think it's one of those magical examples of that.
It is. It's incredible to think about. You know, just the luck of getting to be a part of that.
You're awesome. This was so much fun.
Thank you. All right, your joy. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang just won Podcast of the Year at this year's iHeart Podcast Awards.
Oh, wow. You're kidding. Stop it.
Lady Gaga will take home the Innovator Award at Monday's iHeartRadio Music Awards. Now, these iHeart Award winners are teaming up on a brand new episode of Las Culturistas.
Thank you so much for having me here, but please don't make me get angry about anything in public.
Just open the free iHeartRadio app, search Las Culturistas, and listen now.
Hi, I'm Bob Pittman, Chairman and CEO of iHeartMedia. I'm excited to introduce a brand new season of my podcast, Math and Magic, Stories from the Frontiers of Marketing. I'm having conversations with some folks across a wide range of industries to hear how they reach the top of their fields and the lessons they learned along the way that everyone can use. I'll be joined by innovative leaders like Chairman and CEO of Elf Beauty, Tarang Amin, legendary singer-songwriter and philanthropist Jewel.
Being a rock star is very fun, but helping people is way more fun.
And Damian Maldonado, CEO of American Financing.
I figured out the formula. I just have to work hard, then that's magic.
Join me as we uncover innovations in data and analytics, the math, and the ever-important creative spark, the magic. Listen to Math and Magic on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Cheekies, and I'm back with a brand new season of your favorite podcast, Cheekies and Chill. I'll be sharing even more personal stories with you guys, and as always, you'll get my exclusive take on topics like love, personal growth, health, family ties, and more. And don't forget, I'll also be dishing out my best advice to you on episodes of Dear Cheekies. It's going to be an exciting year, and I hope that you can join me. Listen to Cheekies and Chill Season 4 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Pod of Rebellion, our new Star Wars Rebels rewatch podcast. I'm Vanessa Marshall, voice of Hera Syndulla Spectre 2.
I'm Tia Sircar, Sabine Wren, Spectre 5.
I'm Taylor Gray, Ezra Bridger, Spectre 6.
And I'm John Lee Brody, the Ghost Crew Stowaway moderator.
Each week, we're going to rewatch and discuss an episode from the series and share some fun behind-the-scenes stories.
Sometimes we'll be visited by special guests like Steve Bloom, voices Zabarelio Spectre 4, or Dante Bosco, voice of Jaikel, and many others.
So hang on, because it's going to be a fun ride.
Cue the music.
Listen to Pod of Rebellion on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Emi Olea, host of the podcast Crumbs. For years, I had to rely on other people to tell me my story. And what I heard wasn't good. You really last night. It felt like I lived most of my life in a blackout. I was trapped in addiction. I had to grab the lamp and smashed it against the walls. And then I decided I wanted to tell my own story. Listen to Crumbs on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.